Hey guys, Dota here with my tanky marauder blade vortex character. Um, a friend and I had theory crafted this build from kind of wanting a few things out of it. We wanted a life-based hero. We didn't want to go ES, and we wanted a hero that had a ton of sustain, as well as a big life pool and had adequate damage. And we have more than succeeded our expectations of this build. The core of this build is the Marauder's Berserker Ascendancy class and the amount of leech and damage that we get from that. We feel heavily off of that, and as well as the Pledge of Hands, giving us all that delicious casting speed to keep up our blades. So this is just a gorge map real quick to run as I talk about the build. Last league in Piranhas, I ran a low-life Blade Vortex Scion and absolutely loved it. It was the most fun build I've ever played. The Blasting Cap was the original creator of it, and it was just absolutely fantastic. And expensive, extremely expensive, and yeah, like it had its limitations, but overall was fantastic. Painting map here. Fantastic build, but I wanted to recreate that. It was life-based because energy shield gear is usually ridiculously expensive and hard to obtain, and a great crit spell dagger and all that stuff was tough. So I went the role of life-based and picking up Mind Over Matter for some extra defenses, and scaling off of cast speed and mana regen. If he's sending this back, we're not doing it. Alright. So anyhow, the build is absolutely fantastic. I Facetank pretty much anything in the game. The theory is a joke. Uber Azaro is pretty much a joke. Even a fully charged one. So let's just quickly look at our items and passives. So items first, we Pledge of Hands is our core of this build because of the level 30 spell echo, the flat percent or the percent based spell damage, and the percent based increased mana is just absolutely fantastic. We got Blade Vortex, Iron Will. Let's talk about that in a second. So Blade Vortex, increased AOE, we swap in Conk effect for bosses if you want. For the most part, you do plenty of damage and can tank it. Added fire damage, controlled destruction, and faster casting. We have Iron Will support in there because this amazing gem. We have so much strength from our Marauder. We were sitting at 539 strength, which is just adding to our HP and would add to our melee physical damage. But what Iron Will does is it converts that to apply to spell damage instead, and it's absolutely amazing. I think we did calculations. We're getting like 160 or more percent increased spell damage from both the percent based on the actual gem as well as from our strength. It's absolutely fantastic, and even better yet, it gets better. It has no mana multiplier, so it adds no cost to your Blade Vortex. So I'm at 69 here. I take this out, I'm at 69 mana cost there. It's absolutely a fantastic support gem, and it seems ridiculous. Anyhow, we move on to our let's move on to the next core item of the build is a Comb's Heart. No, I shouldn't say core. The Comb's Heart's fantastic because it gives a ton of flat life. It adds fire damage, which we do a lot of elemental damage, and gives us a good chunk of armor. I actually ran with a Belly of the Beast for a long time, and you can get a cheap Belly of the Beast. Needs no links. It's actually preferred to have no links in it because you won't put stuff in there and be like, oh, I'm gonna miss that if I go to a Comb's Heart. But the Belly of the Beast gives a ton of life and a little bit of resist, which is kind of nice. Again, be concerned of that when you're gearing out before you get your combs, because if you lose that 10 to 15 elemental resist and all of a sudden you're under capped, you'll be like, oh gosh. So yeah. So these are just the two, I would say, core items to the build. Followed with the helmet, I just went with high life, high strength, high armor, and then I have chaos resist on here. I wanted a little bit of chaos resist. And then this has an open suffix, so I can roll whatever I need on this. So I just kind of kept that up. And in here I have Leap Slam, mixed with Fortify and faster attacks. And my Molten Shell is in here as well because I need a slot for it. I did have Endurance Charge on melee stun, which was nice. But I needed to swap that out for Molten Shell just because I wanted that flat armor. Amulets, we have just high strength, high life, spell damage, and a little bit of resist. I mean, this amulet gives us, what, 44 plus 28 is 72? Yes, to say 72 strength. And that equals a lot of HP and spell damage. Plus the 24% spell damage and 71 life. Pretty fantastic. This cost me about 20 chaos. I had one that was just slightly, wasn't quite as good. It cost me 4 chaos. But when you're min-maxing, you kind of want to just push everything to the limit. So I bit the bullet and bought one that was 25, and I love it. Here I have an unset ring, which is pretty important because I put my Summon Lightning Golem in there, which we want for the cast speed. And here, just strength, life, mana regen, and the lightning resist I needed. I rolled flat mana onto it. You know, you could get a better ring than this, but it's not too shabby. This bad boy is beautiful because it gives me dexterity that I need, life, mana regen, and fire res. I roll flat mana, and the all res roll on a prismatic ring is pretty nice as well. Our gloves, we just needed dex, life, silver resist, and then just kind of get as high of armor and evasion as you can get. And our gloves, we have clarity, decoy totem, hatred, and Val haste. Hatred and clarity are 2 auras that we'll be running. Decoy totem has been in there just because I use it in the leveling part because it's super nice to distract enemies and basically allow you to freely damage them. Our belt is just, we want a lot of strength, a lot of armor, a lot of life, resist, and physical damage. So Rustic Sash is absolutely paramount to this. It just adds too much damage to not to use anything else. Lastly, our boots are just decent rares, have decent armor, a lot of strength, a lot of life, the resist you need, and movement speed. These boots could definitely be improved with a higher movement speed roll, but I don't have the currency at the moment to fund that, so this is where they're at. And we just have a cast with damage taken, Mortal Call, Warlord's Mark, increased duration, standard stuff. For flasks, we go Divine Life Flask. It helps, but honestly, like, your health pool is so huge that 4,000 health over 7 seconds is not that much. This is mainly there for, like, desecrated ground maps or like the lab and stuff like that to kind of like get you some health back. But I mean, we regen health so back from leeching that's our main thing. Series Promise, obvious choice. I use a granite flask of adrenaline because I like to have the extra armor, and it gives me 30% increased movement speed. So it's a little bit less than a Quicksilver flask, but I honestly like it. I might swap in for a Quicksilver flask, depending on what you want. But we Leap Slam and Whirling Blades everywhere. Taste of Hate, absolutely amazing for this build. If you get higher roll, the better. This one's kind of a lower roll, but just defensively and offensively, it just adds a ton. And then I'm rocking a Sulfur Flask for the 40% increased damage, and I needed a Bleed Immune Flask. So there you go. That's my flask. In our weapon swap, we have 2 Prismatic Eclipses. We have Whirling Blades, Faster Attacks, Fortify for a movement skill that we can swap to. Do know that if you have blades summoned and then you swap to your swords, these blades will still spin and they make sounds like they're hitting things, but they actually do no damage. And when you swap back, you have to resummon blades. So don't wait for a boss fight, build up like 50 stacks and then switch and Whirling Blades into them, because you will do no damage and get wrecked. But yeah, for moving around maps and stuff like that, it's absolutely fantastic, because that's the one thing this build kind of really lacks is in the terms of movement ability. And then in here we just have our Conk effect, another Blade Vortex leveling up, and Righteous Fire, because we're trying it. Even though we have Valpax, we're trying it for Ethereum, because it's exciting. And we live life on the edge. Path the Tree real quick. Just came out here, went life, more life, a life in armor, life, here. Picked up the jewel sockets later, so came up here, did a bunch of life. So here's like leveling this character was a little bit of a bitch because you need dexterity because you want to go Blade Vortex as early as possible, and Blade Vortex is dex hungry, and we have 0 dexterity pretty much until we reach this part of the tree, which is end game. So getting dexterity on rings and amulets early on is absolutely paramount to leveling. You could level as something else, but I just think Blade Vortex is a ridiculously good leveling skill. Picking up life, jewel sockets along the way here, spell damage, AoE, life, blah, blah, blah. Mine Never Matter, I would say you could pick up around mid to late 60s when you have a decent life pool. I would say once you pick up the Pledge of Hands at 60, I can't say, at 67, I think it is, grab Mine Never Matter because it just gives a ton of mana, and this just helps because it's an extra buff to our defenses, and the fact that our Ascendancy lets us leech 1 to 2% of mana is absolutely fantastic because it'll just constantly be regenning. And then I came up here, got life. Over here, we eventually picked up Elemental Overload. It's absolutely fantastic. We have a 5% crit chance, which is like you think, oh, you don't have enough crit. We actually have no problem with sustaining Elemental Overload. It's absolutely ridiculous. And it gives 40% more elemental damage. And we are actually doing a lot of elemental damage because we're running Hatred, and we haven't added Fire. So we're converting a lot of damage to both Fire and Cold, and then our Combs boost our Fire even more. So Elemental Overload was absolutely a no-brainer. Since we don't do a ton of crit, we didn't want to spec into crit multi, so absolutely fantastic. Jewel sockets, I come down here, pick up Shaper is really nice. Unfortunately, the life regen goes to waste, but the mana regen's nice. Increased AoE, flat mana, and jewel socket, life, and then we got more skill effect duration. We decided to go, when we theory crafted this, when we were figuring out our links, we didn't want to drop any link for increased AoE, or sorry, increased duration in our actual skill gem set because we wanted that Iron Will as our 6th link. So we sacrificed and had a little bit less duration on our Blade Vortex, but we got it all from the tree, and we're sitting at 9.5 seconds, rather than I think like a increased duration one would just potency of will would last like maybe 10.5, maybe 11 seconds. So we lose a little bit there, but that's fine. And then eventually, late game, we're coming here to AoE and the Heart and Soul for the mana and life. We come down here and we get Valpact. And then this, I did this right at 90. Before that, I had gone up here, which is fine. It's less points, but it just doesn't really give you much. It gives you a little evasion, which we don't need, and a jewel socket, which we don't really need, and we'll get later on. But here we just get a lot of elemental damage and life and cast speed and dexterity along the way, and intelligence. Like, it's just amazing. That just frees up so much on our gear to not have to be so dex heavy. But yeah, so Valpact I picked up, I want to say around like level 82, 83 when my stuff got high enough level, and especially when I got the 6th link. Pledging Hands my 6th link this. My damage was fine. Physical Reflect really wasn't a big issue, but Elemental Reflect would kill me. Like, I could not run an LA Reflect map. I would die. I just could not leech life back fast enough for how much damage I was doing. So that's when you realize, okay, we got to go Valpact. So unfortunately, it's out of our way, and we lost some points, in life regen and all the stuff that we had going. But it's absolutely paramount to the build, and it's fantastic. At 94 is kind of where I plan to stop with this character, and I just plan on picking up these 2 jewel sockets right here and calling it good. With jewels, we need, a good jewel is like spell damage for wielding a staff, and life. Anything above that is great. You can add some cast speed on there is fine. Yeah, and then this one I think is the heaviest one. It has physical, spell, and spell damage. Jewels are a big part of where you're going to put money to. These are not cheap for the most part, but they're not super expensive. You can get good deals every once in a while. Ascendancy-wise, we picked up Pain Reaver first. for the life and mana leech, which basically means it's fantastic for leveling. We never have to worry about leeching. Mana is really never a concern when we're in packs of enemies. We leech back plenty of mana. And then I went to Grave of the Slaughter, gives us almost nothing, and Aspect of Carnage is where we went. And Merciless, we picked up that, and then the Uber Trials, we picked up Cloaked in Savagery. So basically, the hard part about this build is the fact that this is fantastic, okay? But then you come here, and this is one whole trial and cruel. This is almost nothing for you, and it just kind of sucks, but whatever. But then this is absolutely fantastic. Huge damage increase, and then this is a huge sustain increase. Absolutely. So we get 50% increased damage if we've taken a savage hit, and we get 100% of that damage to boost his life. Absolutely fantastic. So yeah, I think that's about it. Bandits, I went Oak for the life, phys damage, and passive point. Yeah, I can't think of anything else I really need to talk about. I'm just going to run a quick Springs map. Actually, I don't know, you've already seen build in action. But I'll run it anyways because I want you to see how damn good, not pack size or whatever, how good that elemental overload is, and just how often we keep it up. It's completely ridiculous. With a 5% chance to crit on Blade Vortex, 5% chance to crit. Look at that. It just does not go down. Like, I don't know how this skill's not broken, because I feel like if you had like a 50% chance to crit on Blade Vortex, that'd be way more than enough for a build. And then you just stack a bunch of crit multi, and you'd be hitting like a truck. The blades just crit so much, but who knows? I don't know the math behind it, but yeah, so, and it just absolutely face tanks everything, damage-wise. It's fantastic. Leech Slam sucks ass, but better than nothing. Yeah, anyhow, this is kind of the build in general. Just trying to take a savage hit real quick and see what our damage does. Oh, we didn't talk about damage. What's going on here? So, so with increased AoE in and just elemental overload up, we're sitting at 24,000. Again, this is not with 2020 gems, and we're only level 90, so definitely can go up from there. If we have elemental overload up and we pop all our flasks, we're sit at 35k. So pretty fantastic with increased AoE in. Most of the time you don't even need to have all that up. My highest tier map I've run with this character is tier 13. I did an excavation map, I believe. Just absolutely wrecked. They tank the bosses, no problem, like it was just easy mode. Unfortunately, my map RNG is absolutely atrocious, so highest tier I have right now is 11, so enjoy. And then we'll swap in Conk Effect real quick. And then let's do this. Alright, so with Conk Effect in, and with Elemental Overload, we're sitting at almost 37,000 Rogue Exile. Just absolutely face taking everything. It doesn't even matter. Like, they can hit you, but it's just like, yeah, I leech back life instantly. And with all of our flash pops and elemental overload up, we're sitting at 53,000. So pretty amazing. Not absolutely insane amount of damage, but more than enough to do anything you want. I mean, it's absolutely face tank and roll a theory. And I haven't tried Uber yet because I don't have the fragments for it. That'll be an update when I get them. But yeah, so right now the enchantment on my boots too, I've been looking to upgrade. Here, just absolutely tear this down. There we go. Just got a refund. absolutely don't care. It's completely ridiculous. So yeah, last but not least, this is something I'll show off later in my theory video. I take out my clarity, and then, so like right now we're sitting at 32K in our hideout, with, with conch effect in. If we pop this, we go up to 50,000. But as you can see, it just drains us. So if I run a ruby flask and my life flask, I can sustain it long enough for the Atsiri fights, and that's about it. But we'll see that in the Atsiri video. Anyhow, if you have any more questions, feel free to post in the forum. And yeah, I super enjoy this build. It's fun just to face tank anything, and I hope you enjoy it as much as I do.